Hello, everybody, and welcome back for what will be round 7 as we continue getting into this. Is crunch time, right, Jack? This is where it matters.
For sure. We're starting to see this will be the first round where people auto-qualify. Obviously, if you're in that 7-0 bracket, you'll auto-qualify for day 2, which obviously people are going to be aiming for. And yeah, we've got a really, really interesting matchup here. 2 6-0 players. So one of these players will be guaranteed day 2 after this game. We're seeing a deck we haven't seen on the stream so far. The big deck from Darkness Ablaze, Eternatus, up against another big deck, Vikavolt V. So it's going to be a really interesting matchup.
Yeah, so this is going to be a game of kind of the deck that was most hyped, played by someone who's actually been on a super cool run of form, like through the Players' Cup qualifying, making it pretty deep into the Players' Cup as well, in Darren J, who's playing the Eternatus list, up against a player from the US, Alec E, I don't know his surname, who will be playing the other deck that saw a lot of hype, especially for this tournament, in the shape of Vikavolt. So it's going to be that matchup that people have, like, this is one of those games that people would have spoken about and discussed the ins and outs of this particular matchup, because this is, when you're thinking about these decks, you naturally think about this matchup because they both come from the same set, right? So is this a matchup that you've had a chance to test an awful lot?
I think Vikavolt is one of the decks that I've put the most time into, and I think in general, like you say, a lot of people have been putting time into Eternatus, so there's just a lot of data out there at the moment. Interestingly, both of these decks have a lot of things in this format that they lose in after the rotation. So in Darren's deck, he's playing the 2 Sneaky Smash. He's playing the Weavile line, including 2 Sneaky Smash Sneasel, which are really, really good. They were really good in the Japanese meta. There's a lot of decks that only manually attach and have to manually attach over 2 turns. So Sneaky Smash definitely gets a lot of value in this format. Also playing the Yveltal GX, which obviously rotates in a couple of weeks' time. But that GX attack, knocking out any Pokemon that has 4 damage counters, as long as it's in the active Pokemon active position, it's really, really strong, especially as HPs are getting higher and higher.
Well,
we can just knock out anything.
Right, that's the bizarre thing. You think Eternatus, this is an insane card because it does 270 damage. That's a lot of damage. It's not enough. Things have like 300 HP now. So having the chance to be able to do, specifically the setup that people will look for is something along the lines of a poke with the Eternatus V for 30 and a Zigzagoon Ping to set up the 40 damage counters for that Yveltal. And it's a single attachment, which means that you can put the 40 there, take a KO on something else the next turn if you can, and then you can just, those are prizes that you've banked that you can just go grab when you're ready. So it really does help smooth the deck out, which can be really important when you're up against a deck that really kind of wants to disrupt you quite a bit in the shape of the Vikavolt V. You know, you play a lot of item cards so that you can specifically thin your hand down to Crobat. And, well, that's kind of difficult if you're under item lock.
Yeah, I think item lock is definitely going to be one key in this matchup. Obviously, there's a variety of different items that the Eternatus deck wants to use, so we'll see whether the Vikavolt player can disrupt the Eternatus deck enough to be able to get over that 340 HP sort of huge landslide that they have to deal with. Yeah,
as we get the coin flip underway, this is actually a matchup where Vikavolt's one of the decks that's quite happy going second anyway, and Eternatus would like to go first because it wants to evolve. So, this is one of those ones where the coin flip, it's more of a formality. Like occasionally as a Vikavolt player, you may even choose to go second. So you can guarantee the item lock, or basically guarantee the item lock, and they don't get a support beforehand. It's not always the wisest against Eternatus because, if they get a turn of items, that can be kind of all they need to get to the point where they basically have everything in hand. Just go, but I one-hit KO you every turn, you lose.
Yeah. So it looks like Darren has started with the Eternatus. Looks like he's got a variety of different Pokemon in his hand, though, with the Vikavolt and Absol on the bench on the Vikavolt side. Looks like he's just going to attach, probably trying to get his hand as little as possible, as you said earlier on. They want to be able to draw as many cards as they can with the Crobat, especially against this Vikavolt deck. Before they can't use any of their cards, they want to get them as much value out of them as possible. So Darren's probably going to be looking to try and get a pretty explosive turn with Crobat just before he's not able to use any of these cards. It looks like he's grabbing the Eternatus VMAX as well, ready for next turn.
Well, for this deck, that's his priority now, right? He's got the attach, and all he wants to be able to do is, okay, next turn I need to be threatening a one-hit KO. And there are lots of ways this deck can do that. So this is the kind of setup that you're looking at, right? He can go attach, He can play the capture energy, get something onto bench, evolve, crowback, get a load more cards, and just thin his hand down for the value, but also be in the position where he doesn't need much more to start taking one-hit KOs. Meanwhile, we see that Alec is playing the Guzhala engine in this deck, which is it's basically a one card. I have the item lock now, which is kind of insane in this matchup.
It's incredibly strong, netting you a stadium as well as a special energy and a tool. That stadium being Thunder Mountain, reducing your lightning Pokemon's attack cost by 1, grabbing you that energy for that second attack cost, usually a speed energy, which is also drawing you cards, as well as a tool, maybe something like a Cape of Toughness that he plays to make these Vikavolt even more difficult to knock out. Looks like he's gone for the escape board though, probably trying to protect some of his other Pokemon from getting trapped, so that he can continue to always use that paralyzing bolt. Oh, he has the Cape of Toughness
already
as well.
Value from the escape board, it means that if he is probably half expecting the Eternatus to get the KO next turn, like it's not beyond the realms of possibility. So it just means that he has the pivot in the Absol, but it looks like he actually had a pretty slow hand otherwise, not really having anything else to do that turn. The item lock's fine, but I mean, we can already see that Darren's well on his way to getting this KO.
Definitely. He has the extra Pokemon. He only needs 6 Pokemon on the bench to be able to one-shot. Though with that Cape of Toughness, he's going to have to fill his bench out to 8. Though with the extra Pokemon he's drawn, plus the capture energy, that's another 2 before he's even used Crobat V. So there's definitely potential for Darren to even take a KO this turn. It's going to be a little bit more difficult because of the item lock. But regardless, Darren's going to give it his best shot.
Okay, well, he actually draws into the Marnie. Brief pause between playing. It's like, well, this is the draw supporter I've got. He does get 2 more Pokemon. Doesn't really want to be playing the Crobat for no draw, though. And kind of going, well, my opponent kind of had what looked like a pretty dead hand, so I'm going to have to Marnie it, just hope that I can draw into the Pokemon, but is ever so slightly short, unable to use the second Crobat. It's not quite the Shaman EX reprint, because you can't use 4 in a turn, much to, I think, basically everyone's approval. So this is like, okay, you've drawn your cards. You're going to have to take the 2-hit knockout here.
Yeah, he's actually 10 damage short. So 1 more Zigzagoon, and he would have actually had the knockout here, which is crazy just to think. He might even be benching. Yeah, he's going to bench the Crobat just for the damage. So that means he can maybe take these prizes with a Galarian Zigzagoon in the middle of a turn and try and have a big, maybe even 4 prize swing at some point.
Yeah, I mean, all it's going to take here is he already has the research in hand. If he rips that research and hits another Zigzagoon, he can take a minimum of 3 prizes in a turn from the looks of this board state. As we see, quick ball for Alec. Really not an awful lot going on in that first turn. It looks like he might have even had like 2 Guzmahala in hand, which is unfortunate. You really play that and the tag call engine just to get that turn 1 going. It's actually a pretty slow card for you outside of that very little value. Preparing the next Vikavolt.
Yeah, he's going to have to grab another Vikavolt. Interestingly, Darren could take 2 Vikavolt KOs next turn, as we've said. With that 1 ping from Galarian Zigzagoon, that Headbutt Tantrum will knock out the active. So there is another Cape of Toughness though. So it's we're really seeing Alec put on the pressure, making sure Darren has a lot of these Pokemon to be able to get these knockouts. I'm going to see a Dedenne from Alec as well.
Yeah. So what's interesting is that these Vikavolt lists tend to play an extra attacking option, with many lists originally going for the kind of Raichu tag team GX because of the fact that it had paralysis, which kind of worked nicely with the whole disruption element of the deck anyway. But actually we see that Alec has opted for the Pikachu and Zekrom GX. Partly I guess the full blitz value is pretty good, right? Like you can full blitz some stuff and you can sort of set yourself up a little bit. But also, I guess the Tag Bolt can finish games, because that's the one thing this deck can struggle with, is actually finishing the matchup.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to take a lot of work, especially since you're going to really want to be putting a lot of effort into getting this Vikavolt out early. He's going to have to go for the Power Accelerator here from Darren. Obviously, that is still going to take the KO, but couldn't quite sort of do much else with his hand. Again, that item lock just showing how strong it is. Even in positions like this, Darren still probably didn't have the optimal turn, even though he was taking 2 prizes there.
Yeah, it's a slow turn to take. There were no energy to accelerate using Power Accelerator, so it was just 30 damage for the KO. And it just feels a little awkward. But it's not even the fact that he drew a load of items. Let's be real. He drew mostly supporters. So the item luck was only so-so. But it's just a disruptive turn. Gives the turn to kind of like take the Malolana. Because if it's not going to be a one-hit KO, you can switch and heal. And that can be enough sometimes to kind of take the pressure off and flip it onto your opponent. As we see a Marnie now, the combination of Marnie and item lock is just super strong. You get rid of their hand, and you probably make it so that they can't play all of it.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's one of the strongest decks that Marnie is in right now. Lowering their hand size immediately is always good. Marnie is seen in a great number of decks anyway, but like you say, combining it with item lock is pretty brutal. Looks like we're going to see Tapu Koko Prism Star here using Dance of the Ancients to attach some energy. He was able to attach some to the Pikarom, so that's maybe going to be able to push the Pikarom to getting to that Tag Bolt stage a little bit sooner, which is nice. Or maybe even, like you said earlier on, just going for that full blitz at some point during the game to set up another Vika Volt.
Well, he was actually like, if you had to switch out, there was the option to have E-Power full blitz to take the KO sort of thing. Like it just kind of sets the deck up in a slightly different way, because Vika Volt plays not in the same way that people had expected it to, of it being really slow and grindy. It was pretty happy to be disruptive and then go bang, bang, bang with 3 big attacks. And just by the luxury, effectively, I can call it that, of being able to attach the extra energy from full blitz, I guess makes that part of the plan a little easier. As we see another capture energy, just didn't fail it, just really wanted the attachment there, and poke to kind of set up the attack for next turn. There's guaranteed retreat at this point if he wants it.
Yeah, deciding not to attach the energy, interestingly, as we see a third energy come down onto Alec's Pikarom. Maybe this will be the turn that he decides to go for the full blitz to take the Eternatus KO. Or maybe he'll carry on being content with the item lock, considering Darren, again, had a pretty slow turn. Nothing was really done other than that capture energy. Looks like we're going to see a tag call from Alec, seeing the Malolana come back out. Maybe healing some of this damage off to avoid, or to make it more difficult at least for Darren to get a one-hit KO. Though Darren is holding a couple of Pokemon, so this one-hit KO is definitely in Darren's rage. And then just another paralyzing bolt from Alec.
Yeah, so here there is just, there's no supporter. The ideal scenario there for Darren was just top deck the VMAX, right? Just to go, yeah, but I'll just take the KO and I have the other one ready. But he does know that if he takes the KO this turn, there's almost certainly no item lock coming back the other way. Quite a few of the energy are already in play for Alec. So it's going to be difficult, and the fact that with the amount of there are already 3 abilities in play for Alec, which means that even this Weavile's starting to look a little scary, to be honest. Like this could start taking out the last couple of prize cards really easily.
Yeah. It definitely has to be in the back of Alec's mind just to not overbench these abilities, because all of a sudden this Weavile, this one prize attacker, one energy attacker as well, doing 50 times the amount of abilities on Alec's board is going to be pretty brutal. Darren retreating into the Eternatus VMAX and taking the KO there, down to 2 prizes. And we're going to see what Alec responds with. This Pikarom is looking like it might be finally it's time to shine, but even then, it's still a pretty awkward spot. Does have the escape boarded Absol, though, for the pivot, which is nice.
Yeah, so from Alec's perspective here, he's got to deal with this active Eternatus, because if he doesn't, it doesn't matter about item lock here. It's just going to be declare attack and win, unless he leaves the Absol or the Jirachi in the active position. But even that's not great, because then it's like, well, he can probably Crobat again and might find the Gust to win game, as we see an Eldegoss for the boss's orders, probably looking again just to switch back to that already heavily damaged Eternatus V, just to kind of go, well, okay, we're going to make it harder for you to win. We're going to lock and maybe just try and stick this in the active again, just so I can take 2 prize cards and see if we can maybe squeak out a win later.
Yeah, definitely. Go for the Crobat, though.
Okay, so
the paralyzing bolt.
I guess the Crobat there is, as we see that Darren actually would have top decked the game. I guess the idea with going for the Crobat here is it doesn't matter. It's still higher retreat cost because of the Absol. Yeah. But it means that he can still potentially do something like a Tag Bolt for 6 energy to take the KOs on the Eternatus VMAX and the Eternatus V off the bench simultaneously, making him much stronger around things like Stamp as outs.
Yeah, definitely.
It's an ugly turn. Like, you don't really want to be researching here. Like, I think it's still fine, but it hurts. Like you sat there looking at your VMAX, the boss, and you're like, well, okay, attach an energy next turn. I win anyway. It's fine.
Yeah, for sure. He's got the Crobat. He's got the other Eternatus. Though that Eternatus isn't looking too strong, as there's no energy attached to the Eternatus V right now. But he's got the energy to retreat the Crobat, and obviously has the boss to be able to gust around anything in case that Alex leaves a 1 prizer in the active. So yeah, we're looking like Darren has a pretty good hand. Maybe we're going to see some more disruption, maybe a Marnie from Alec to see whether he can try and limit his options. And again, there is the Marnie, so we're going to see how Darren draws off of this, seeing if Alec can just keep applying these little bits of pressure to the point where Alec can really put Darren in a spot. There's a 4th energy.
That's a whole lot of items in that hand.
Yeah.
Yep, that's gonna hurt. I mean, he's only a top 30 energy away from game still, but
Turbo Patch does not count though, unfortunately.
No. So it's just gonna be a pass back. But again, it's not as if he's under massive pressure, right? He can take the time. It doesn't feel like it all the time, but he can just kind of chill here. Kind of just pass the turn back. It's not as if he's going to lose the game next turn.
Yeah.
There are already too many bosses orders gone, I think, from the Vikavolt side for it to be like boss 5 prize kind of turn.
Yeah.
But interesting to note that Darren's not playing a copy of Absol himself, which is, I think, one of the more common inclusions for a bench sitter, because a lot of the time the Pokemon in Eternatus aren't a big deal for attacking purposes. So, just that extra disruption could have meant a turn where he could boss here and stick an Eldegoss in the active with a retreat cost of 2, get a turn with his items, and then he's probably fine.
Yeah, definitely. Does top deck the Eternatus VMAX. Obviously, that has 3 retreats, so it's not really a live card for Darren. But again, he's pretty content as long as, basically, as soon as Alec takes a KO, if there's no 1 prizer in the active, it's going to be pretty tough. Alec's really going to have to use this Tag Bolt to try and deal with the Eternatus. Because that's the biggest threat on Darren's board right now. But with 340 HP, it's got 50 damage, so still 290. That's still a monster to get through.
Yeah, that's going to be basically all of the E-power simultaneously to get through it. But that's not really an option, because here, this is the situation you can get in if you're patient against Vico. If he wants to continue the lock now, he has to lose.
Yes.
Right? There's no simple way around it. If he declares the item lock, it's game on board.
It definitely puts Vikavolt players in a spot at certain points, because early game this item lock can be really, really strong. But late game, as you can see, there's not been much pressure applied by the Vikavolt player. So Darren has already been able to take 2 prizes, and we are going to see the Tag Bolt taking 4 prizes, and basically Alec just hoping that Darren cannot find either a boss or enough Pokemon to deal with this Pikarom. Obviously, we do know that the boss is in hand for Darren, so he is going to be able to seal this game here. But that was probably the strongest play that Alec could have made, just to try and force as many cards out of Darren as possible to be able to take this KO. Looks like he's actually not going for the boss, maybe just going for the KO in general. He only needs 7 on the bench to be able to do 240. So yeah, that's just the strength of this Eternatus VMAX. A huge 340 HP and being able to do a cap of 270, along with things like Zigzagoon. This deck can really knock out almost any Pokemon in the format, especially across 2 turns. But even, it can surprise people and definitely take prizes very, very quickly. So we see a win for Eternatus there. Darren now 7-0 and guaranteed for day 2. One of the first players guaranteed from today's tournament, from the day 1 pod. Really interesting to see. The first time we've had Eternatus on the screen, and obviously showing that it's proving it's
it locks itself in, right? Yeah. It's amazing because people talk about the slight differences between like an online event and a real life event, and it's not to say Darren hasn't done well in in-person events. Like, I know he has a few good finishes at them, but since the switch to only online, Darren has been pretty consistent in terms of just getting these solid results. He made the knockout rounds of the Players' Cup. He then did quite well in the Players' Cup, and I think he made it to the second weekend, maybe even the third weekend. I don't remember. And then also now securing himself day 2. Just easy lock-in of day 2 before no extra effort. It's just done now. And that's great, right? He can put his feet up. He can watch the rest of the stream for the day. He can keep an eye out for what other people are playing and start thinking about what deck you would play into this format tomorrow.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
That's the thing. This tournament is really, really interesting. Similar with Worlds, day 1 and day 2, you are not locked into the same deck. So Darren can take a little bit of a sort of a chill 3 rounds, kind of see what's doing well, what's not doing well. And at the same time, maybe look at his Eternatus list or a new deck in general and start to think about some of the tech options he wants to add in. Obviously, we've seen a lot of ADPization doing well today. A few Vikavolt, a lot of Mewtwo has come out of the woodwork. So maybe there could be a couple of techs that he missed today that he has decided that he could decide to add in tomorrow, which is definitely going to be, it's like a whole new tournament tomorrow, even though it's the same sort of weekend. It's actually a whole new tournament and there's nothing locked in already. It's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, and I just mean like the advantage of having this little bit of extra time can be big, right? Like it's a lot of Pokemon to play over the course of a weekend, even if it's online and like a game might only take you 10 minutes. It's still a lot of Pokemon to play. And just having that luxury of, taking a breather.
Yeah.
Preparing yourself for tomorrow. Though my understanding actually is that Darren plays a lot of Pokemon because he was, I think, number 1 in the points finish for the qualifier for Players' Cup in Europe by some startling margin. Like that must have been an unholy amount of games. But he got there. So
yeah, I know Darren personally. He does play a lot of Pokemon, and it's really, really good to see that paying off now. Obviously, he's picked up this Eternatus deck. Again, as we said, one of the most hyped decks out of this new Darkness Ablaze set, and showing that the hype wasn't sort of fictitious. It was real. And even in light of other really, really strong decks from Darkness Ablaze, like Vikavolt, really able to put up a fight and close out the game pretty convincingly, to be honest.
Well, yeah, and it's not as if... So we see why I think that's the kind of matchup Vikavolt was always going to struggle with, and I think why it completely vanishes from, as far as most people are concerned, post-rotation, is because against these VMAX decks, like he had item lock every turn, but it still wasn't enough because they just have so much HP, and it turns once it's kind of on board, if you're just poking it for 50 every turn, it doesn't care. And then the Center Scorch, it needs one. It doesn't even really need a welder, if I'm honest. It could just go attach, and just roll through you. Because once they're on board, they stop caring about those items in hand as much. And that can be kind of scary for a Vikavolt deck, where you have to stall for a little bit and then get the pressure. You have to be applying that pressure. And I just don't think that ever really started happening for Alec. And from testing, there were a lot of games where you're going, I know I need to pressure now, but if I pressure, I probably lose because they now get their items back and they'll just go off. So it feels like it's going to be a matchup that Eternatus should be somewhat favored in.
Definitely. The interesting interesting thing about Alec's list, at least, was there was not too much disruption. There was no hammers. There was no sort of yell grunts. And I think that definitely can become a factor for sure, because obviously Eternatus is a pretty slow attaching deck, especially as Darren, despite playing Weavile GX, did not actually play the Darkrai Prism, which can accelerate energy. So had Alec had some hammers, some yell grunts, that kind of thing, we could have seen a very different game there. But because basically Alec went for the sort of super consistent Vikavolt, I want the turn 2 item lock, that's great in certain matchups, but against some of these sort of bigger VMAX decks where the 50 damage just isn't enough, you really have to lean into the sort of hammers, the energy disruption, even the sleep package. And none of that was really used by Alec, which I think they're the kind of things that can create headaches for Eternatus.
Well, it's also, this is actually people saying, well, once E-Power goes away, Vikavolt goes away. And I don't think that's necessarily true. I think you just change how you play it a little bit. Instead of being this kind of slightly tempo-y kind of deck, that deck that is going to go slow you down for 2 turns and then go 2 into 2 into 2. Like it's capable of doing it. It's probably going to pivot into that more, probably play something like the Cinchino's make do, draw a load of cards, have the disruption and the lock, because that's actually pretty difficult to disrupt. It does mean having to go to the Amoonguss build post-rotation as opposed to the much easier to pull off Mareep. But it's an option. It's like, but something that I think a lot of people maybe overlook, because that's not what did well in Japan. The Japanese Vikavolt lists that did well with this style of list. I'm going to hit turn 2 item lock, and I don't care what happens otherwise. Like that's my game plan. We'll see if we can get there from that.
definitely. Interestingly, like you say, we haven't had any real tournament data based on, post rotation. So it's definitely going to be really interesting to see how Vikavolt lists evolve. Like you say, whether they add in that Amoonguss package or the Cincino package with heavy Yell Grunt, things like that. I think Vikavolt will always be a card that is in sort of the back of players' minds. Item Lock has always been good in this game. At least people will always try it out. So definitely a card that I think will be in the back of people's minds the whole time it is in standard, and we're just going to be waiting to see whether a new partner unlocks it that maybe Thunder Mountain and E-Power currently are doing right now.
Yeah, and we also know that there's more sets coming out, and I think they even announced that the next Japanese set is supposed to have, it's like something lightning or something like that. It's probably going to have electric support in it. So it's like, okay, maybe there'll be some support for it in a few months' time. If it needs it, who knows? It might still be a pretty strong contender. But I think that's basically all the games. Or like, there's not many, like, because of the way the tournament's working, we're like filtering out people who can't make day 2 at this stage. So I think the rounds are starting to speed up.
Yeah.
So I think we should cut to a short break, and we will be back with round 8.
Yes.
When we have it. So don't go anywhere.